Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the very first episode in the series of Kraken Pit. Kraken Pit is a show dedicated to giving a lot of information to you, the viewers, about Vainglory, about how it works, insights into what will make you better as a player, little bits of information, and the way I intend to do that is by having guests on the show that will be able to give their experience and knowledge to you through Kraken Pit. My name is ImPERium. I've been playing Vainglory for about a year and a half. I'm currently an elder in Valkyrie Valhalla Guild, and for me Vainglory is a really big passion in my life. I want to see it grow, I want to see it get better, I want to see more people playing it, and this is part of my way of making it better. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, I'm very, very proud and honored to introduce my very first guest to the Kraken Pit, Mr. FooJee. It's
Hello.
very, very nice to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking. So nice to meet you as well.
Thank you very much. First thing I obviously want to talk about, and I know people have mentioned it before, and it's a obvious topic with you, and I'm only mentioning it because I have one too. That beard is epic. It's beautiful, man. Your beard is just it. I think it kind of defines you. I know it's hard to explain why, but you with a beard is just magnificent, and from one bearded person to another, I very much kudos you for that.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm trying to dig deep into my Irish Viking roots, right? So it's the closest I think I can get in my my padded lifestyle here in the States. But no, yeah, man. I honestly, people ask me a lot about it. I don't particularly, I guess, think too much on it, maybe not as much as others do, but in the winter time I'm kind of developing a tradition of having a beard, and then when summer hits, it's kind of a 50-50 of whether I decide to keep it or not. But yeah, treats me well, so.
That's what I like to hear. So if in any way any of the audience don't know anything about you, would you please kind of introduce yourself basically, and who you are and kind of what you do?
Yeah, certainly. So my IGN in the Vainglory community and even broader is known as FooJee. My real name is Ben Watley. I currently live in San Francisco, California, in the United States. Been here for a couple of years, working on various projects, but mostly over the past year and a half, kind of focusing full time in the esport industry. And even more specifically, with Vainglory and Super Evil Megacorp kind of being the first major mobile esport initiative. So before I moved to California, I used to work for Apple in the past. I did kind of boring adult job work in the professional industry, so I won't bore people with the details. And then went to college before that, so I'm still fairly young. I turned 30 this year, so I'm not the youngest maybe around, but still feel energized, good, and ready to go every day. So that's good. Pretty happy about that. But currently, I am the head coach for Echo Fox's Vainglory team. They reached out and brought me on board a couple of months ago to help and see if perhaps the team that they acquired, which are Colamik, Mikshi, and Lone Delphi, if I could help them, achieve some great things in the spring season. So we'll see what happens. And before that, I did some broadcasting work and analyst work, so people might have caught me on some of the Evil 8 desks for Vainglory, or during the live championships in summer, or at Worlds during the winter time. Other than that, man, I'm just living each day at a time. I'd like to feel like I'm living the dream, so it's pretty exciting. But that's a little bit about me.
That's really awesome. When you mentioned about doing the casting, that's how I got to know you, as kind of got to know your name. I listened to you casting like the worlds, and listened to you speak and doing analysis, and that's what really kind of brought my attention to you. And then from my point of view, when I got involved in Vainglory more from a Twitter point of view, obviously followed you and got to know more about you from that point of view. So yeah, so you took on the managerial position of Echo Fox. Obviously, it since it was announced, it's a kind of a hot topic for people to ask you about and to kind of get some information about. And I'm all for getting a bit of information, but I don't necessarily want to kind of keep on talking about that because I'm sure a lot of people have heard already about that. But one thing I am interested is how often do you get to talk to the members, Mishi, Koldamik, and Lone Delphi, about the game, and how often do you tend to scrim and watch them play and essentially practice?
Yeah, so every single day I talk and spend time with them. So it's like a 7 days a week kind of thing. It's pretty rare that I'm not interacting. When it comes to how often I'm actually with them, I'm there 100% for every single scrim that we have. So we scrim a number of teams throughout the week, but our practice and scrim schedule usually ranges between like 1 p.m. and 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So within there, we generally will scrim 1 to 2 teams, and then we'll also have time for the players to do solo queue practice or just play some games in ranked as well. So we try to kind of diversify it up. We're scrimming probably about maybe 5 or 6 teams fairly consistently right now during the off season. That'll flex a little bit once spring starts, but yeah, I'm pretty much there most of the time through that. When they're practicing or solo queuing or streaming, I don't necessarily have to be there, but I still try to find time to talk with them and to be as much of a friend as I can, as well as a mentor and a coach to them, strategically and emotionally. So yeah, pretty frequent, but that's the way I like it.
That's good. That's real good. And to be honest, I kind of didn't really expect any different kind of answer. But with this new role, obviously it's. I know you've been co-owner of Gangstars, and that is obviously a different type of role.
Mhm.
What, how, and obviously you're growing into the managerial role in Echo Fox, but how much has it challenged you, or what is your thinking in terms of how can you be the best manager you can be, and because obviously you as a person is you as a person, but as a manager you have to be somebody different. And what's your thought on what kind of manager you want to be and what kind of manager you need to be?
Yeah, so I guess my style of leadership is very much almost more of a servant style. So my goals are really much to take care of as many things as I can, so the team can primarily just focus on playing. I think the best players will generally be freed up from a lot of those responsibilities. So like every day is a day where they can grind, work on their mechanics, work on their individual skills as a player, so they can get better. So a lot of the administrative staff, administrative tasks and stuff that gets done, I just take care of it on the back end, so the players don't have to worry about it. I wouldn't say any of that's particularly challenging. Like I said, I come from my previous careers and startups that I used to be a part of in the past before I went to the esport route. Definitely prepared me for, I would say, much more difficult day-to-day tasks of like running a business and running a company. So being a coach of a Vainglory team and the essence of what needs to be accomplished on the day to day is actually really easy. Just being transparent. The difficulty comes into how much I challenge myself to really find ways to help grow the players. I mean, we're not living together, so there's some limitations to um, like physical engagement with them actually being in the room and being able to do stuff together as a team. But outside of that limitation, for me, it's a lot about their mental fortitude and health, as well as how well they're doing in game. So I think the challenge really just comes into like learning each of the players. Because when I was brought on to Echo Fox, I was not brought on with knowledge of Mixsheed, Lone Delphi, and Cole the Meek in terms of like coming in as coach, it was like, for me, it was like working with a brand new team, because I've not worked with these guys together before. I wasn't working with them prior to the Equifax reaching out to me. So a lot of it's just been learning that identity and really trying to dive into figuring out how can I help each of these guys? What are their learning styles? What do they respond to well? Is criticism the big thing? Is positive reinforcement the big thing? And making sure that I treat each of them
Yeah.
specifically to those individual learning styles, as well as make sure the group together feels as much like a family, and everybody's having a good time at the end of the day.
Yeah, I totally get you. And do you plan on as a group of people, when are you hoping to be able to kind of meet in person as a kind of group of four with the players and the manager? When are you hoping to come together?
Well, we will be officially together for the first time this coming weekend during the preseason invitational that Super Evil Megacorp is hosting. So we'll actually, I have met Mixi and I have met Cole the Meek in the past in person. This will be the first time I've met Lone Delphi in person, but having the whole team together is going to be pretty exciting. There'll be other teams there as well, so I think everybody will definitely have a good time. But yeah, that's this weekend. So they all get in like Friday. So plan on spending some time with them on Friday and Saturday, and of course we have the event on Sunday.
How much personal pressure do you feel for Echo Fox to succeed? Like how much kind of personal pride, kind of your some might say like your brand name, because you're known as somebody that knows a lot about Vainglory and knows a lot about what you're talking about, and to be kind of the manager and head coach of a team, how much pressure do you feel for that to succeed for yourself?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. So I definitely feel responsible when we win or lose, because I definitely have some influence over that. Especially for this year, at least 2017, having a coach or an analyst team, in my opinion, is still a luxury. I don't feel like it's still an ultimate requirement, because there's not enough strategy in Vainglory that requires a lot of back-end teams working to kind of help build and train players to remember. Teams that generally have the best mechanics and practice the most will probably still always come out on top. I would be surprised to see a lower skilled team take number one just because they have a coach or an analyst. I think it's to try to kind of fine tune and really maximize what the players are capable of doing together. So I certainly will feel a lot of pride if we win. I will certainly be sad if we lose. I don't think it's not a concern that if the team loses that it will reflect very poorly on myself, meaning that it's very obvious when players are in game, how they're performing and how they're competing mechanically is definitely still on their shoulders. But when it comes to the greater organization of Echo Fox, yeah, of course, like I still feel like a lot of the how we go into the game, where our mindset is at, how the players are feeling, their confidence levels. Most of that rides on me, so I definitely have a lot of pride in execution. But no, I'm not. I won't take it personally if we like underperform so much, so where it's just like, oh, I've failed as a coach. I can't make it in the industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little bit of a balance, but I think it's just because of how young the Vainglory esports scene is still, that having a coach, having an analyst, it's still very much up in the air about how effective it's going to be.
Yeah.
And certain teams are kind of taking, the jump. Immortals, Echo Fox, specifically, and then there are some other teams like Cloud9 that have a pretty big analyst squad, and I think everyone's kind of testing it out, and we'll see if it's effective or not.
I get you. Yeah, so to kind of talk a bit more about esports in itself. Recently, I'm aware that NBA announced that they were getting involved in the esports game quite heavily, and starting up so that you could get involved in esports and play the players. And I'm not 100% sure about all the details. I just read a little bit about it. How much of an impact do you think that is or will have on esports when it comes to the likes of Vainglory, that area of esports, and do you think it's a positive thing, and how much do you think it'll snowball towards Vainglory from an esports point of view?
I definitely think all like publicity is good publicity for the most part, even if it's not particularly helpful. I think there's a bit of a concern I have. I'm not sure how many other people feel this way or think this way, but where esports, like, people are looking for validation through attention from major things like the NBA coming in or major companies coming in. And I actually think that's a weird approach a little bit. The esport community is very vibrant, right? Like, it's growing, it's still young, it has a lot of potential. You definitely want partnerships that are very large scale. But I think the approach should be, interest from the NBA or interest from, Major League Baseball teams or whoever's coming into the scene should be approached as just that. It's an organization that's interested in coming into esports because they see an opportunity for, new athletes, a new way to, make money and market, and all of the smart business decisions that they do. But it shouldn't be viewed as like, oh, if they're paying attention to esports now, we must actually be like a thing. Like, this is like a validation that esports is actually real. I think that's kind of like bullshit, right? Like, we don't have to have these major physical sport orgs come in to prove that esports can be successful. Like, we've made it this far without them. I think we would go plenty far without them. So it's like a 50-50. I think it's good for the scene. I just think people need to be careful about like why they think it's good for the scene. And don't lose some of those core values that have really allowed us to grow as far as we've come so far.
Yeah, totally agree. Because slightly thinking about it myself, one of the biggest things from my point of view, but the difference between something like Vainglory esports and NBA esports is something like NBA esports or major sports organizations going into esports is that it's quite heavily, as you touched on it, money making point of view. It's very heavily, okay, we're getting into this because we see an opportunity to make money, grow our brand, but essentially make money from that. Whereas I think something like Vainglory and other games that are involved in esports, but obviously Vainglory because this is what we're here for, it's very much about passion. The passion that players, people in the game, outside of the game, coaches like yourself and developers, it's not really about money. It's in their heart, it's in their soul, it's the time they put in to see something like a game grow or their skill tier grow, because it's their time that they've put in. So the reason why I asked you that is there's those obvious differences, which I think you'd agree, but esports from Vainglory point of view still needs some form of financial investment. So the reason why I asked is, do you think it something like NBA coming into esports, does it show other brands like, let's say, Coca-Cola or Monster or big companies that there is an area for investment and that there is something that they can get into, so they can sponsor Vainglory organizations and put money into Vainglory teams to try and grow the game and to make it a bit more commercial? And kind of, do you think that's a bad thing?
No, I don't. I mean, like, at the end of the day, if money is not being generated, these things don't happen. Like, you can't sell out stadiums to people for free. Like, there's no such thing as selling out for free. That's kind of like a paradox or something. But like, I feel like yeah, I mean, it doesn't work, right? So like, we have to be realistic and understand that like Super Evil Mega Corp, they don't survive without money either. So of course, any monetary infusion, I think is a good one for the most part. It's sometimes a bit overboard. There are many teams I think that are overpaying certain esport teams. A lot of these major orgs are doing loss leading. I actually think that's kind of what Vainglory is, even for a lot of these orgs coming in like Echo Fox, Immortals. having a Vainglory team is very inexpensive. It doesn't right now cost organizations a lot to do that. Some of the orgs that are paying the players or coaching staff or analysts are kind of doing a loss leading thing where they hope that this financial investment, especially those that have gained a franchise spot, which have still not been announced yet, but they're getting some monetary return on their investment, but mostly they're putting money into something so they can kind of be there first. So I think for Vainglory, that's nice. It's nice because when these orgs come in, they bring more eyes, and more eyes, brings more viewers, which gets you better relationships with sponsors. But at the end of the day, I still think it's up to Vainglory to really put the gas down on their marketing plan because they just still haven't done as much public marketing as I think they should. And whether or not the NBA comes in, it might have an alternative effect in Vainglory. I don't, think it particular like if the world of esports grows, then Vainglory can grow with it. But it's not a direct influence per se. And a lot of the teams that are even looking right now like are still they're not like they're popular names, if you will, but they're not like organizations that are known for being like great and winning a bunch. It's not like the Lakers have put their foot down in esports. It's not like the Patriots are joining. So I think there are certain organizations that are just looking for other opportunities to succeed, and they see esport as kind of one of those. But it's still all very, very new. So.
Understand. You touched there on Vainglory having to improve their marketing and kind of needing to push that. I was kind of gonna touch on this later, but now that you mentioned it, I don't know if you've seen it yourself, but when I go to watch a video on YouTube, I see ads for other MOBAs, which I won't mention any particular names, but with all due respect, they're not very good MOBAs. Now, my opinion is, okay, these companies that own the MOBAs, they're spending money on advertising the MOBA, which is all well and good, but when the MOBA isn't really good enough to begin with, what's the point in spending money on advertising? So, in a slight defense of Vainglory's point of view to what you mentioned, I prefer Vainglory putting their money into developing the game rather than spending money on advertising a game that really isn't that good. Do you agree, or do you have a different kind of opinion on it?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I think returning money into yourself for like research and development is always really good. And no product is ever perfect before you launch. You kind of have to find the balance of, when do you go to market with your product and how much are you willing to be okay with the rough edges. So the other MOBAs that are out there for mobile are garbage. Like they're just awful games. Like the graphics are bad, the play styles are bad, the way that you interact with the game is bad. But it doesn't matter because the mobile industry doesn't sell the same way that the console industry and the PC industry does. The mobile industry is built around fast, instant gratification platformers that people feel like they can hop on, do a few things, and hop off. And that's the way the majority still views mobile gaming. Vainglory is, Super Evil Megacorp. They're trying to change that opinion by building a a, a system where people can actually like when they engage with the game, the only reason you would even know it's a mobile game is if someone like told you they were watching it, right? So they're not sacrificing to make money because that wasn't their initial goals are to create something very wholesome, something they believe in, and something that a community of players can be in love with.
Yes.
That being said, the number one games in the App Store are there because they spend an insane amount of money on marketing garbage games, but people still download and they still play them. Like there's a reason why the number one app stores are those instant buy, like you hop in, you run out of time to continue playing, pay this much money or wait 24 hours. Like that kind of stuff is, oh my God, I hate those games so much. Like they're really bad. So we're having to retrain, if you will, the mobile audience when it comes to what can you do on these games. And I think Vainglory has for maybe somewhat rightfully so, have not done a ton of marketing, but honestly, I just think it's because they weren't ready to. Like when 2.0 launched and when 2.1 launched, there were still so many changes to just the core meta of the game.
Tell me
And,
about it.
Blitz coming out, like, I think Blitz was definitely like a really great idea, which will be a big hit amongst majority of the audience. So Vainglory is just kind of still figuring out what they want their core game to be, and perhaps then they'll look to kind of put it out there. But yeah, I mean, right now it's still, people still don't really know about it because like it's just not really being advertised heavily. So I don't know when they're going to pull the trigger on that. I hope it's sooner than later because I think the game is in a state now to where it's still better than every other MOBA that's on mobile by far. So
It's better than most mobile games. I know it's hard to compare, but I think it's best. It's better than most mobile games. I know we're a little bit biased because we're heavily involved and we're passionate about the game, but even looking at it from a pure kind of graphics, what you can do in it, the fact that it's free to play and they don't spam you with adverts and all that jazz, and it's kind of they realistically leave it up to you to spend money on it, and if you wish to spend money on it, you can still, as we know, get all the heroes for free. It takes longer, of course, but you can still get all the heroes for free. You can, as I said, essentially play the whole game, reach Vainglory for free without spending a single penny. What other game allows that?
yeah, it's really important that they keep the integrity of the game together when it comes to not being able to buy things that make you stronger, right? Like it doesn't become a true competitive game if you can purchase to win necessarily. So yeah, I mean, like I'm glad to see them like monetizing their game a little bit. Like this year was great. Like there are a lot more options to buy ice and skins and stuff. So a little bit of fixing perhaps I think what were some pretty big errors last year where they just the skin system was kind of like in a weird place. The chests and stuff they released were not great value for the money, so they seem to have turned a lot of that around so far in 2017. So I kind of want to just fast forward to the end of this year in a way to some extent, because like I think this is like the most important year for Vainglory, and all the decisions they make will be like the game in 2017 will be the next biggest thing that's going to have years of success, or they're just going to like peter out and kind of always be where they're at. So I think that's what this year is kind of all about for them.
I get you, and I agree within reason, but I kind of don't want to agree because I don't want it to be all about 2017. I'd like to give SEMC a bit more patience and go, well, no, look, it's still a grown thing. They can't rush it so that in 1 year it becomes, this bigger. But I get what you're saying. But anyway, to kind of move onto somewhat of a different subject, with pro Vainglory players, and as we know, there's a lot of kind of pro players out there, and most of them, one thing I've noticed myself, as I'm 28 years old and I absolutely love Vainglory, with pro players seeming to get at, and I know you've touched on this with other interviews on the age limit of pro players and the minimum age, but with the age of pro players kind of seeming to get younger, do you think it's harder for older Vainglory players like myself to become pro? And do you think there's something Super Evil Megacorp could kind of do about that?
I still think for people to be professional competitive players, it's just like it's inside of you, right? Like it's like a mix between talent and dedication to the trade. So if you're 30 and you have the time and willingness to be able to put it in, I mean, you could still be at the top of your game. You could still be a professional player. Age in and of itself uh, does have specific detriments to reaction time and stuff. I mean, it's just the way it is. But there's always exceptions to the rule, right? So I definitely don't think there's anything particularly Vainglory should be doing to like give someone of a certain age, better opportunities at becoming a pro. I think if you're going to become a pro, you're just going to do it with what's available to you the same way that a 14-year-old kid will, right? So I think there's things that people that are older, like yourself or myself, have that younger minds don't. And I think that's why you kind of get a mixture of maturity levels, and you get a mixture of strategy between teams, and you get a mixture of teams that they can lose their first couple of games and do a reverse sweep because they have someone on the team that doesn't like tilt like super hard because they're maybe a little bit older, and they can kind of keep the team together. So
Yeah.
I actually think it's a bit of a mixture. Honestly, I feel like the concern's on the other side. I feel like the concern is allowing people that are 12, 13, 14 to be in the competitive scene, because I think it makes it really difficult to appeal to teams that want to be more serious about it. They want to have team housing, or they want to have specific, things they want to be able to be involved in, but they're kind of hamstringed by the age. And it does look a bit funny to the outside audience as well when you've got, essentially children competing on stage.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, the difficulties when you're older also come into the fact of you have more responsibilities, more things you have to pay for, so you
Oh,
can't
tell
just,
me about it.
exactly, right? So you can't just like play Vainglory for, 8 to 10 hours a day and hope to go pro. You kind of either had to have been there at the beginning and be recognized to be able to do it, be skilled enough to be able to be picked up, and then hope that you're kind of in the right place at the right time. Because it's
Yeah.
honestly no different than becoming a professional athlete. Like it's like the 0.00001% that actually make it. And if you set out to be a pro, a lot of times, if you're not already kind of in the space and already mentally there, you may not make it. So I think
Yeah.
it's a bit of luck in life, being born at the
Okay.
right time, having
Yeah.
the right skills, all that kind of jazz.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was definitely interested by your answer. Kind of wasn't expecting what you said, but totally, absolutely love it. We'll move on to kind of another topic that is big within Vainglory and obviously other mobile games and even console and PC games is streamers and people that stream and kind of essentially advertise the game for free. Do you think there is more in some way SEMC could do to I know SEMC do give streamers ice to give away and let's say skins, but do you think there's something more that they could do, whether to kind of help streamers and to kind of maybe push that area of audience to try and get more players in the end?
So, I mean, I know this is a bit of like a hot topic in the community when it comes to like content creation for streamers and versus like SCMC, let's say, going out and grabbing a like high-end League of Legends pro to stream Vainglory for a few days. So like,
Okay.
they go out and pay them to do it or whatnot. So
Didn't know that actually.
yeah, I mean, they've done it. They've tagged a few people. Double Lift, for example, with TSM, who plays League. Raynad, who's a Hearthstone player. They've had some like top end individuals. They've gone out, and, be paid to stream. And
Yeah.
a lot of people are like kind of like they feel weird about it. They're like, well, I wish SMC would just invest that money into the community streamers and whatnot. So here's my blunt answer. Uh,
There you go.
no, like it's bad to pay a community streamer because whether you like it or not, you're not bringing more views to Vainglory. I don't care how passionate you are about the game. I don't really care like how much time and energy and effort you're pouring into the game. You don't have 20,000 people tuning into your stream on a random Friday night. So if the goal is for Vainglory to reach a larger audience, then I think it's wise for them to strategically partner with people that are outside of the Vainglory community. Now, on the other side of the equation, they are doing things, especially this year, for the Vainglory community. They have a content
That's true.
creation team
Yeah.
that I actually am a part of as well, and I kind of listen to them. Everybody talks together. They have an ice program where they compensate the players with
Yeah.
skins and stuff, and they give them, like you said, giveaways and
Yeah.
whatnot. I think perhaps an area SCMC could step up in is a little bit better, maybe advertisement of some of these community streams and
That's
whatnot.
that's
Uh,
kind of what I meant rather than paying them. I meant kind of like promoting them and kind of sharing what they do to
sure.
the wider Vainglory audience.
Yeah, I addressed that because I've publicly seen people talk about it because
Yeah.
people are kind of salty about the fact that, they go out and they pay the streamer X amount of money to stream it and they're like, well, that doesn't really seem fair. And I'm like, yeah, but at the end of the day, life isn't fair. Like, you can't whine about it. If you had 20,000 people watching your stream, then you could strike the deal. But if you don't, you don't. It's the same way they pay an actor, to be on a commercial, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's strategic reasons for it.
Of course.
I don't personally ever feel like Vainglory is really like left people out. Like, of course, there are going to be people by accident that are left
Of course.
behind. They're not going to get the attention that maybe they deserve. But overall, I feel like Vainglory is doing a pretty good job of at least trying to bump it up. Vainglory
Yeah.
doesn't have great Twitch numbers. I mean, the game is not well known enough to have really large audiences.
Well,
But yeah.
one thing to do, like, one thing that I do wonder, you have two major streaming programs or apps, Mobcrush and Twitch. Do you think Vainglory would be better off kind of trying to stick with one and trying to promote that one Vainglory through that one platform officially, or even, I know it would require a lot of money and investment, but even creating their own streaming website that Vainglory players could stream on, or like, because I sometimes think having kind of Twitch and Mobcrush, it's a little bit like, well, some people stream on Mobcrush, some people stream on Twitch, which is always going to happen. But do you think from an SEMC point of view and the promotion of Vainglory, they'd be kind of better off partnering with one and one only?
Well, so I guess there's a couple of questions here.
Yeah.
Addressing one, should Vainglory or SMC attempt to do their own streaming thing? My initial response to that would just be no, because streaming is hard. Like, running a streaming company is very difficult. The infrastructure, the code, like everything that goes into it is very difficult. So I think it's wise not to do that. I do think whether they're partnering with like Twitch or Mobcrush or Facebook is beginning to launch their kind of gaming live streaming focus this year as well. There's a lot of potential partners. I don't think it like does it hurt viewership, let's say, for players to be on Mobcrush versus everyone streaming on Twitch. I do think Twitch is a much more popular platform, so your average viewer base would probably be higher if everybody was on Twitch. I think it would be difficult to argue that. However, Mobcrush is really easy to stream on. Not everyone has a computer or a peripheral that will allow them to stream OBS and stream it with enough quality that people would actually want to watch on Twitch, because it does require a lot more to do that. So where Mobcrush kind of stepped in, provided an easy solution to stream. It's kind of the only thing Mobcrush did well, to be transparent. Like, the platform itself is not very good. The quality is not very good. It's really buggy. Like, there's a lot of issues with it, but it's easy, really easy to stream on. And initially, they also partnered a lot of the top end streamers in Vainglory and paid them monthly to stream on the platform, which Twitch did not do. So,
Wow.
yeah, so on Twitch, you make all your income from subs and donations. It comes from
Yeah.
your audience. But Mobcrush was cutting checks to players for the better part of probably a year and a half or almost 2 years. And as a person who's like trying to play a game for a living or trying to make it into esports, of course you're going to take that offer. Like, why wouldn't you?
Of course.
So, Twitch, it's not sustainable. Like, I didn't ever really know how long Mobcrush was going to be able to do it for, but that's what most people did. That's one reason why you see a lot of people going back to Twitch now. So if you check the Twitch Vainglory channel, you're going to see a lot more competitive players on there and no longer on Mob Crush. So
Okay, okay, that's really interesting because I myself, I'm more. I know a bit more about Mob Crush in terms of I've watched a few more streams on Mob Crush than I have on Twitch. And Mob Crush is easier to look at, but I don't know much about the difference between the two. So that was really cool to learn more about that. So yeah, going on to as we slightly touched on it in terms of teams and guilds within Vainglory, which we both know that Vainglory have improved heavily on the guild area of Vainglory and making it a lot easier for people who own a guild or run a guild or kind of that area to promote their guild, and easier for people to find a guild from that point of view. Do you think SEMC need to do more, and what do you think they need to do or should do to improve that area of Vainglory?
I definitely think there are a lot of improvements that can still be made in game. It seems like SCMC struggles with having the number of personnel they need to actually flesh out UI updates whenever a major idea comes out, because there's like only so many people that work there right now. So yeah, I mean, I've envisioned now for probably over a year and a half, personal profile pages that you can visit in game of people, and like, the guild stuff. I mean, it's nice that we finally got the ability to like promote, like, let's say, officers in the guilds and stuff, but it took forever to get that feature, and I honestly don't know why. I mean, I could speculate, but there's not really a reason to. So there are certain features I'm like, I'm glad they're here now, but I feel like they should have been here a year ago, and we should be working on other things. But I would say overall, like, the guild environment in game is okay, but there's still a really big lack of the ability to connect with your internal guild mates. Like, you basically still have to have most of your engagement with one another be outside of the game through like an app like Discord or Band or Line. Or something. And I don't necessarily think SMC needs to reinvent the wheel here in creating an all-inclusive communication system internally, but the end game like guild chat is like poop. I mean, it's bad.
It's basically non-existent.
Yeah, I mean, you have a guild tab in the friends section, but like not many people are going to use that because you can't search it, you can't go back in time and look at things. If you miss something, you miss it. Like, there's a lot of really basic features. So I think the like engagement in game is definitely something they need to try to innovate on and step up a little bit. I think a lot of it is the fact that there's nowhere to look at things. You can't like go to like a guild and look up the members and see what they've been playing or what they've been doing recently. Like, I always thought there should be like match history for guild mates when they're playing together that you can look at. Like, there's a lot of those kind of things that would be pretty fun, and maybe some of these API programs they're fleshing out can provide some of it externally. But I'd certainly like if SCMC feels that it's a good move for them to maybe grab some of these APIs and pull them in house and kind of flesh them out in their own game.
Yeah, and that brings on to something that I had written down to talk about and ask about. We've seen very, very recently, in the last 3 or 4 months, two particular sites that have come out, which is Vain.gg and VG Miner, which essentially gives you the option of tracking your match history, your statistics around it, and both are amazing. VG Miner, you could input a screenshot, but essentially you have to kind of put it in manually, and VainGG essentially accesses Vainglory's internal information and pulls it from there and posts it on a website. What I find a bit strange is that SEMC didn't kind of say to these guys, oh my god, this is such an amazing idea, we want to grant you this, but we want to do this under official Vainglory name. So we will kind of, whether it's paying you or whatever, can you do this under the actual Vainglory banner, whether it's putting it on the actual Vainglory website or that kind of thing? I don't get why they didn't do that.
Well, I mean, if you're a small company, something that's quite intelligent, I would think, is if you can develop the tools and send them to the community. If the community's pretty passionate about it, they'll create a lot of the things for you. So you don't actually have to spend the time doing it yourself. And you have a choice where it's like, you know what, we think the community does a well enough job here, so we're just going to let them continue it. Or you say, you know what, like they've developed such a great thing, we actually want to reach out and talk to them and kind of bring it in house. I mean, it's almost kind of like if you were, a job and you put out there like, hey, we have an idea, we'd love for like 10 people to see what their take is, and it's kind of like a mini interview. I don't actually know if SMC is even remotely interested in housing the results API and having it, maybe, I'm not sure, I haven't really asked, but it certainly is a good way to outsource the work, because SMC obviously feels like they can't do it internally, or they just don't have the people to put on the project. If I was SCMC though, and I had the budget, yeah, I mean, I actually think it's pretty nice to pull it in-house, to have your own ladder system and league and ranking systems that people can see all the information within your own app. I think that is ideal. Hopefully it's the direction that they're going with this API program.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it's not to, by all means, it's not to bash on SEMC, because I'm aware that they have limited resources and limited personnel. That, and at the end of the day, I always prefer that they are working. I always prefer that they are working on the actual game and the performance of the game, whether it's casual rank, battle royale, or blitz. That's always number one priority anyway. And also, I try not to be, on a side note, I was kind of going to speak about it later, or kind of ask you about it later, but now that I've kind of got onto it, I'm a big dislike of people that really complain about the game or constantly bash on the game, whether it's one update, the next update, or the next update, because as much as I get a lot of people are passionate about the game and want to see it get better, as I said, the game is free to play. So my kind of attitude is, the game's free to play. If you don't like it anymore, don't play it, or don't spend money on it, kind of, but don't moan about the game but then still play or still put money into it. Like, what's your thought on kind of those kind of people, or did some kind of over critical attitudes that people have about the game or what SEMC are doing?
Yeah, I think people whine and complain too much in general. I think the thing that comes to mind immediately is the whole Finn skin that was going to be given away during the summer championships was only going to be available to people that actually went. And a lot of people were complaining about that. And my response to that is like, why? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't feel like it's takes an entire conversation to explain, but people are just selfish. And when they see something that they can't have, or when it's like,
Yeah.
oh, so like, but it's also a little bit of SCMC's fault too, because there are certain times where SCMC has come out and said specific things like, this skin will never be available again. And the words never should not be used lightly if you plan on bringing it back and making it available. So I understand the whole like limited edition fiasco and people being like, well, I spent money on this, so why can this person get this? So I think SCMC kind of struck a good balance with like giving you an in-game like notifier if you were the original owner, blah blah blah. But when it comes to like things SCMC haven't said, if it's just, hey, this skin's only available to these people, then like the other people should just get over it. Like, I don't know, life is short, right? So complaining about not having access to a skin seems ridiculous, and people that go to like Twitter about it, it's just, I don't know, it's really annoying. So
No, I totally agree, and yeah, that's we'll leave We leave.
Yeah, you have every right to call a company out when they say one thing and then they do another. You have every right to do that. But you don't have a right to sit and bitch and moan about you can't get your skin. Oh my god, like my skin, I wanted it. Who cares, man? Just like move on, and
It's
like
like
there's
why?
other things about the
Yeah,
game
it's
that you
like
should be
why did
excited
this
about.
skin cost so many opals? Blah 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 blah. It's like
Yeah, the game is free to play. People
yeah,
forget. It's like they feel entitled or owed, and I'm
yeah.
like, you're not owed anything,
No, God,
like
no, not
at
at all,
all.
not at
So
all. So one thing, one area about Vainglory that really interests me is the difference in the regions of Vainglory, the differences between the players, because I've heard some things. Obviously, I'm in the EU region, so my Vainglory life has always been involvement of players within the EU region. Obviously, the EU region connects to South Africa as well, but generally, obviously, mainly EU based.
hmm
But I've heard a lot of things about the difference between other regions, whether they're better players and stuff like that. My question to you is, and as we saw in the Worlds, but why do you think EU region gets, whether it's a bad rap or a bad attitude, or is known as the worst region in terms of player quality and player standard compared to other regions?
yeah, well, I mean, I think it's pretty easy to objectively speak about this because we actually have like historical results that
Yeah.
support it. So I don't know why Europe as a region tends to underperform compared to others. Like there isn't like a specific theory that I've sat down and thought about. I think it seems to me that like North America region just like grasped onto competitive advancement a little bit more seriously than Europe did
Okay.
early on. So even though I think Europe was kind of they had some of the first people they were interested in running
Okay.
competitions, especially through like Blueberries and Donjon when they were originally starting Vainglory League.
Yeah.
Um, that was at the time a lot of North American teams were joining European tournaments and playing with like lag and stuff, but still just very interested in doing it.
Oh wow.
Um, I think it kind of started there, but it seems to me like Europe as a region just maybe doesn't take it as seriously. And I think what I mean by that is like when I observed Europe play in a lot of games over the past like 2016.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of the like choices for picks and like and builds and things were just they were just bad. Like they weren't good. And not every region is doing everything perfect. But it just
Yeah.
seemed like in games that mattered most, Europe was showing up at the table with just an underwhelmingly like underprepared strategy. And I think like up until Worlds happened, everybody was kind of like, oh, it's just a regional difference, blah blah blah. But Europe ends up not nobody makes it out of groups, so I
Yeah.
think it kind of ends up being a, like, people that were analyzing it in a correct way were pretty right about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. I mean, it's like I don't ever want to see a region like not succeed. I don't actually think Europe's the weakest region. I think the weakest region right now is South America, probably by far.
Okay.
I think we there are other regions that I think the strongest region overall is still North America, but the strongest team is definitely from East Asia.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Korea as a region is actually, even if you talk to some of the players on like in Armada, they'll actually say they think like ranked play in North America is actually very difficult compared to even their home
Okay.
region. So they actually even
Yeah.
play with
Okay.
sometimes on our servers, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's just it's hard to say. I think Europe will definitely get better this year. There
Definitely.
are players in Europe that are substantially better than others around them. Like Leon, I think, is a popular example. Is a really skilled player in Europe, but yeah, I don't know. They just really need to. I think if they paid more attention to what was going on in other regions around them and actually
Yeah.
like grind it out,
Yeah.
uh, then I think they would do much better. NA is like North America is really cocky, and kind of a bad way to the point to where it's like they're not very good about determining like who's going to be the best, but at the end of the day they always still pretty much end up on top or close to it.
Yeah.
Europe, I feel like, has a lot of the same mentality from its players. They're not very humble. They're also very cocky. It's just up to this point, the cockiness coming from Europe actually I think has blinded them a little bit more to what they actually should be doing to prepare for their own skill and to actually make their teams relevant in competition. So, new year, so it's definitely they could change, but a lot of work
Definitely.
they need to do.
Yeah, definitely, and I do think the Worlds and they EU got kind of kicked in the face, as he said, in terms of their cockiness was deflated somewhat. I think that's definitely a good thing because it means that they've kind of gone back, licked their wounds a little bit, and
Yeah.
kind of gone
Well, I
okay.
mean, you're supposed to be confident, right, going into
Yeah.
a tournament. You don't want to go in and be like, "Well, I don't think we can win,"
Yeah.
I don't know. But like that's where it happens, right? Like you
Yep.
can be a cocky ass all the way up to the point where you get on stage, and then that's where you've got to prove that all the talk up to
Definitely.
this point was real. And the moment that it's not real, you humble yourself, you go back to the drawing board, you
Yeah.
figure out how to change for the future.
Definitely, definitely. To kind of touch it as a kind of different region, but to touch on Vainglory players as a whole, and kind of the different types of Vainglory players, there's a lot of talk, and I see myself being in different Discord servers and all that jazz. And as somebody that's progressed, I would say quite gradually over Vainglory, like even just as close as last season, I was still only hotness, for example, and okay, I've improved a lot, but it's still been quite gradual. And I've heard a lot about different skill tiered Vainglory players having different attitudes and certain skill tiers being more toxic than others. Do you have an opinion on that? And is there a certain skill tier that is harder based on people not giving a crap about supporting their team compared to other skill tiers? And which skill tier do you think is actually the easiest to improve in?
Um, Well, so this might be a slightly tough question for me because I actually haven't really played outside of a vainglorious skill tier in maybe a year and a half or so.
Okay.
I was never someone who was very into playing on alts. I've always kind of just had two accounts that I've played on,
Yeah.
and both of them reached like Vainglorious level MMRs like a long time ago. So whenever I
Yeah.
do play on them, I still basically get matched with those
Skill
similar
tiers.
MMRs.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of what is the hardest skill tier to play in, I still think it's the top. So that um, people that talk about how it's really difficult to get out of some of the lower skill tiers.
Yeah.
And the best way I can say this without sounding like a jerk, you're probably just not good enough to get out of them.
That's
Um,
that's so true.
yeah, like it's one of these things where there's a reason why the best players are always at the top. Like it's not by chance. And it's not just a vainglory thing. Like if you go and look at another game like Dota or League of Legends or whatnot, another MOBA,
Yeah.
you don't see the best players in the world that are competitive or whatever like not being able to get out of the lowest skill tiers.
Yeah.
There's like
Exactly.
they're able to carry hard enough and make enough right decisions often enough to climb.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of see that periodically, that people that complain the most about, this is, bullshit. I should be so much like higher. It's always my teammates that are blah 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 blah.
Well,
Like there's some truth to that in the essence in Vainglory that you have combined uh, team and solo queue. So if you want to level up in Vainglory your skill tier, if you want to get your skill as high as you possibly can, and you want to raise your MMR, you play with a team, you hop on voice or whatever,
exactly.
and you just do it as much as
Yeah.
possible, and that'll help you rise. If you're trying to do it solo queue, the best of the best players will be able to do it, but the people that are good but maybe somewhat average are going to probably struggle, right? So
Definitely.
until Vainglory splits the queues, you're always going to kind of run into that dynamic
Yeah.
where
Of
it's going to
course.
be difficult.
Yeah, because I definitely agree with as far as playing with a team, especially since update 2.0 and 2.1. Well, update 2.0, what the biggest difference, not to talk too much about kind of the updates, but just to bring in connection with the different skill tiers and why I find some people complain about that. With update 2.0, the biggest difference I found is that you had to work a lot better as a team, as in synergy was far more important than individual performance in winning a game. So some people's argument is that, okay, well, I'm good enough, but the rest of my team aren't working with me, so I'm getting caught. Let's say I'm getting caught out in the bush. They're not rotating up enough, and I'm not able to farm enough, and that. So those are some people's complaints about it. What would be, and I'm guessing the response to this, but what would be your response to that?
Well, if you're playing in solo queue, you actually have a very different. You have to train yourself to play
Yeah.
differently than when you're playing with a team. You can't rely and assume that your teammates are going to do the right thing. In
Yeah.
fact, you have to very often play quite selfish. So
Yes.
I would say that people that are struggling in solo queue and finding that they're if they're getting caught out and they're question mark pinging their teammates because they weren't there to help them, most of the time they were probably just shouldn't have been there to begin with.
Yeah.
You kind of have to play as if you're at a handicap. I personally solo queue quite frequently. And it's something I noticed. It's very difficult, I think, to solo queue in like tier 10 because there's so many teams that play at
Yeah.
this tier versus
Yep.
solo queuing when you just start out going through the first
Yeah.
probably 5 to 7 tiers. Solo queuing is a lot easier because the skill levels of the people you're playing against are not very high, and you can still very often carry an entire team to victory kind of on your shoulders
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
good enough. But I do agree with you completely. I think 2.0, 2.1 release, the need for everyone to have some sort of competency about the game to win in a very like smooth manner is certainly
Yeah.
required. And just the nature of the game itself, it becomes harder and harder to be that solo queue hard
Definitely.
carry. Just with the balance becoming more even, less heroes that would be considered just obnoxiously overpowered, which
Yeah, yeah.
Vainglory has released in the past. It's just not really happening as much. And players in general are just on average getting better. So you hit
Yeah.
skill tiers earlier where people, they may not be the best, but they know enough about the game to where you can't just run in 1v3 and kill them because they understand the
Yeah.
dynamics of like
Yeah.
how to fight around that.
Yeah,
So
definitely, definitely. And just to kind of slightly bring in what you mentioned about like when you're pretty blunt about a player, if they're not able to get out of a skill tier, they're not good enough. I agree with that so much, especially now. But when I was getting out of hotness, for example, I played with a couple of friends, and this one particular friend of mine, he kind of carried me to SA. And I got into SA, and I was obviously super delighted. I didn't rank until obviously about a week later because I was scared.
yeah.
Um, because I'm like so proud of SA. I don't want to lose SA, as is normal when you reach a new skill tier. But the next time I did play a rank match, it was solo. I lost, and I instantly lost SA. It was kind of then that I realized, no, if I'm not good enough to be in SA, I'm not gonna get there. I'll get there when I'm good enough to reach there. That's simple as that. Um, but kind of bring on to another question that some people say since Vainglory changed so that instead of after every season your rank resets, you now decay after a certain amount of time. There's been a lot of kind of complaints that people who are in higher skill tiers, mainly POA and Vainglorious, I hear more about Vainglorious, that when they reach there, they are actually good enough to be vainglorious because they reach there and they maybe play one or two ranks just to stay up there, but they aren't really good enough. So people have been saying, well, vainglorious isn't really the skill tier it used to be because, like, people get there, but they don't actually earn it back because they kind of just stay there. One thing I've thought is, do you think SEMC could do with actually adding higher skill tiers now?
I actually don't think we need more skill tiers necessarily. What I would like to see, and maybe this is like a cliche at this point, but I love the idea of there being a top 100 skill tier that's similar to like Challenger in League or something like that, where you
Okay.
essentially have a ranking of the best players. They're kind of maybe in their own skill tier. Maybe it's like whatever skill tier 11 could be. They could just call it that. But
Okay.
I think what the best case scenario is that you have to split team and solo duo queues. You can't have them together because if you do, your ranks mean almost nothing because TSM, Echo Fox, Immortals, if you're on the pro team, you're always going to be at the top because you're literally queuing into people and just crushing them because you're a professional team. So it really hurts the I guess the integrity of having an actual leaderboard because the top players are always going to be at the top because they know each other, they almost exclusively play with each other,
Yeah.
and they're never going to pick up randoms to play with if they're actually trying to grind their skill tiers. And you best believe if a leaderboard comes out, everyone's about to get real sweaty because they want to be at the top of that leaderboard. They want to be number one, and they're only going to team with the people that they think will get them there. If you split the queues, it's a little different because people may only solo or duo with someone that they think is going to allow them to win, but you don't get to form an entire team. So every single time you go into queue, you're at a little bit more of an even footing with who you're up against. And at that point, you could actually reset everyone's skill tier in MMR and have everyone climb from the very beginning again, which is kind of my dream because the thing that they have now
So
is not really good for people that are like myself or higher ranked because there's nothing to do in the game.
So are you saying that Pete, that you should essentially kind of have a separate skill tier for you as a solo player and a separate skill tier for you as a duo
No, I
or a
think you have
trio
to split
team
it to
or
so you would split it. There would be team queue, which you could actually have your own ELO. There already is team ELO, but it's pretty irrelevant because you actually get ELO gains from like casual matches too. It's weird,
exactly.
but anyway, so you have a team specific ELO board and even its own leaderboard if you wanted to, of where you go in with a 3-person squad and you only get to queue into other 3-person squads, right? Like that's just the way it would be. Um, the other side of the equation is you have a solo slash duo queue, meaning that you can go in by yourself or go in with one other person, and that would be its own like ranking system as well. So team would be separate. The reason why I say the reason why I don't think you can do a solo only and a duo only. I mean you could. I just don't know if there's enough players. But the other side of it is like you don't want a MOBA that doesn't allow you to play with your friend. And even though it's a 3v3, I still think the ability to duo or solo is very even compared to having like getting a random third or a random two is still going to be a much more clean ranking process than running into 3-man teams. That's just a very different dynamic. So I don't know. I mean, you can obviously even test it out. Like you could spend a year doing solo duo and then team split, and then you can reset all the skill tiers in MMR and have everyone climb from the bottom. Like that's what I want to see because
Okay.
skill tiers don't reset now. So like you just forever live at where you are. And
That's kind of what my initial kind of point was, that people are kind of living in these skill tiers. Like for me as a player, like I don't want to just stay in POA because it's POA. I want to get to VG Gold. I just don't want to get to VG and stay in VG Bronze because it's the highest skill tier. I want to reach VG Gold. I want to reach that highest point that I can as a player. Because the skill tier is a representation of your skill, obviously, but you want to put. For me, I want to push the boundaries of me as a player and improve. And I know there's a lot of people like that out there, but obviously there's a lot of people out there that are kind of a little bit, I would say, narrow-minded and a bit kind of egotistical, that they'll hit that skill tier and they'll be happy just to stay there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like having a virtual trophy every
Yeah,
season that's like, hey, you've
exactly.
earned this skill tier is fine. But you're right, like it doesn't really mean as much anymore because
No.
people aren't climbing every
Yeah,
season.
exactly.
And I think it's just a symptom of like what Vainglory created for itself. Like Vainglory does 4 in-game seasons, so for the non-competitive player, expecting to reach the highest skill tier in 3 months may not be uh, possible. Like
Yeah.
especially if you're not grinding a ton of games and really
Yeah.
trying to get there. So I think for Vainglory, it's like, well, if we reset skill tiers every 3 months, we're gonna have a lot of people mad because they never really feel like
Yeah.
they're getting to progress beyond it. But I just think the easy answer to that is you just don't reset every 3 months. Like you don't have to follow the in-game seasonal structure with a ladder reset. You could do that just once a year or
Yeah.
twice a year or something. Like give people more time. So to me, the solution's really easy and clear. I just don't know. I honestly, in my gut, I think they're gonna do it. I just don't know when. Like I have no idea what the timeline is.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, that's. I want to try and bring a couple of fun questions into, or the kind of a more casual kind of
Yeah.
question answers. What's the funniest action moment memory you have of seeing or playing Vainglory?
Oh man.
And I know it's a bit of a tough question, but kind of funniest or
I've
most
had
entertaining.
I've had so many like experiences in Vainglory, like where I've just been chilling with people and talking to them on Discord and just cracking up, playing games and having a great time. I think maybe the most like outwardly funny moment there where I just like cracked up laughing forever was actually one that someone had clipped and posted because I was streaming when it happened. Yeah, there's like a really popular video out there that
Was that
shows me
funny?
essentially killing myself by shanking Catherine on the CP saw. And like when it happened in game, it surprised me so much because I literally went from 100% health to dead just from one shank, and I literally like I was just cracking up, and like somebody clipped the video and posted it, and it had like I don't know, it's like had over 500 to 600 retweets and likes. It was a fairly popular for a Vainglory video tweet, but yeah, that was pretty funny. Like I literally was just laughing out loud in my stream because it just surprised me. Like it was so funny because my teammates actually killed themselves on her right before, and I was like, "Oh, that's ridiculous. I'm just gonna go finish her off because she's got like no help." And as soon as I ran into the bush to shank her, she popped her shield up
Yeah.
again, and I
Yeah.
killed myself. So.
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely
Oh
brilliant.
yeah, that was really funny. But there's so many experiences I've had that have been quite great.
Yeah, like one of the absolutely funniest crack out, laugh out loud moments I've seen is, and again, I was voice chatting with one of my VG friends, Gushmeister. We were playing, I think it was a casual match, whatever, but he was playing Weapon Power Kestrel, and as you know, with Kestrel and with Melee, you stutter step like crazy. So he went to do his Kessler ult, and instead of it going in the direction of the enemy, it went in the completely opposite direction. And it was just one of those, I berated him for like a couple of weeks about it. Like, I was just like, yeah, be careful about that Kessler ult. And that was just a moment that I was like, absolutely amazing. You just kind of don't expect it to happen, but when it does, it's brilliant. It kind of makes the game in some way.
Yeah, no, it's really fun. Honestly, like I would just even enjoy having like some drinks and playing like Blitz or something with friends because like the actual like the Blitz mode itself I think is great for that kind of
Definitely.
environment where you're just looking to have a good time
Yeah.
and just kind of, smash your face against your device and hope to win and who cares like the state you're in. It's like it's a competitive like game mode but a little differently because your
Yeah.
focus doesn't have to be as intense
Yeah.
as like in a normal mode. So yeah, I think there's plenty of even more good times to come
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely, and like even kind of like you've seen, and we do it ourselves in the guild that I'm in, Valkyrie Valhalla. like we do basically like kind of off meta Mondays, or basically we try
Yeah.
and get as many people in the guilds to kind of join parties and do these like all shatter glass, all clockwork, all tornado trigger, which is, it doesn't really matter who wins. It's just seeing all these absolutely so many hilarious moments, like two cruels on all tornado triggers trying to beat each other up. It's an endless war of just constant regens. Those moments like
Yeah.
that is just really, really, really vital to like having fun in the game and keeping it lighthearted kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Um, so yeah, the last couple of questions I wanted to ask have been, because I put out when I found out when he agreed to be my first guest, so I put a shout out for a couple of people for anybody to ask a couple of questions
Okay.
to you that they might find interesting as an answer. One really, which I absolutely love this question, never thought of asking it to you, and I forget who it was, and I apologize if you do watch this, and I forgot to write down the names of people that asked the question, but you know yourself that you asked them. One guy asked, "What I'm most curious about is how much is a pro player or coach making? Not the number of hours, but money per month from Vainglory, or being a part of Vainglory." So,
Yeah. So, uh, oh, go ahead. Was there more
no,
to
no, no.
the?
I was just gonna say it's a pretty interesting question, and yeah.
Yeah. So, it definitely differs pretty heavily from team to team. So I think like overall, you're probably seeing players get paid. So, like in the professional scene, players are getting paid $0 to probably maybe your top player in the scene would be making. I don't actually know, but I'm thinking maybe somewhere between zero and probably $3,000 a month is kind of what
Oh
you might
wow.
see on average.
Okay.
It just depends on the organization and the requirements, because it's not just about like X player plays professionally for this amount of money, because like different orgs will have like sponsor requirements or streaming requirements. If it's a
Okay.
homegrown or grassroots organization, a lot of your payment might be associated directly with streaming. Other organizations associate your payments through like more merchandise, so maybe you get
Yeah.
less monetary income, but you're compensated frequently with things from sponsors. But I don't know, like because this is kind of the first year of all these external organizations coming in, it's a bit difficult to know where everyone lands, and they're pretty like most of them are fairly quiet about their initial offers because
Yeah.
Vainglory, like so publicly, Vainglory's had some teams come out in the past and say, this is what we're paying. But it actually, I think, controversially hurt the scene a little bit because of how
Okay.
early on they announced it. A lot of teams weren't willing to pay yet because the scene was still too young. And I think it was like putting the cart before the horse kind of
Yeah.
thought process. So maybe by the end of the year, we would probably see more public announcements about pay, because once contracts start expiring and players are allowed to go from one team to the other, a lot of the times that information has to become public anyway, because teams are allowed to offer based upon new offers in order to keep players in terms of compensation. But
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
probably my guess.
Okay. Okay.
So
Really interesting. It's I said, it's a really interesting question that I never thought of asking myself. So, and I didn't want to ask this kind of question myself, because as I said, I didn't want to ask too much about kind of you and Echovox, because it's something that gets talked about a lot since it's been announced, and people might have gone, "Oh, well, I've heard it already." But seeing as this was quite recent, somebody asked FooJee, what does he think the reason was that they faltered against unknown members' crew in the last match?
yeah, so we lost in the VIS Pro to a team called Cruise Snipers. So essentially, we shouldn't have lost in terms of like what my expectations are of the
Of
team and the
course.
performance that we should have had. And I'm not just saying that because it's just what you
It's your
say.
kind of your
Um,
job.
yeah, no, I'm literally saying it because we shouldn't. Because the number of times that like the guys have run into this team just randomly throughout ranked matches or other areas. It was never particularly an issue. But what I've kind of found out through watching these guys play and kind of prep is that this is their first time kind of as a trio in a set of tournament matches. And there's a few things that in terms of like nerves, and I think being the first game underneath Echo Fox, where they were perhaps a little bit too concerned about how they were going to do and like what they were going to do in the game, and they kind of just forgot to play Vainglory a little bit. So there's a lot of emphasis I think being put on the VIS Pro and kind of what's happening in the off season. But I think obviously the real results will kind of show themselves in the spring when as teams are preparing. There's also other like tiny nuance reasons that probably don't really matter and they're not really an excuse. But as an example, we play at like 7:30 or something Pacific, and two of the players on Echo Fox live on the East Coast, which is 3 hours ahead. So they're playing games around like 10:30 to 11, close to midnight, and they're like self-proclaimed. They play worse, like the later the night gets. Whereas I think crew snipers actually like their prime time hours that they play typically are at that time, which is kind of interesting. Like we personally structure our scrim schedule to be as close to the Vainglory 8 tournament times on the weekends as possible, so we get as much practice in during the actual hours we'll actually be competing.
Which makes sense.
So I know there was some tiny like little nuance things like that aren't really excuse for winning or losing, but they certainly don't like help the team in any way.
Not at all. Not at all.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't really have too much to say about it except that the guys just kind of underperformed and choked, and it shouldn't have happened. And they definitely felt it afterwards pretty hard. And they're working really hard to make sure they're on their top of their game for the spring season.
I getcha. Okay, that's cool. So the last question is again quite an interesting one because you see a lot of them there, and being in a guild, we have some teams. But somebody asked, how do you stand out as an amateur team within Vainglory, especially because organizations are coming in with these kind of big names and announcing these players. But as an amateur team, how what do you think is the best way of standing out, or let's say getting noticed?
Well, I mean, the easiest way is just to beat other teams, especially like in the Challenger Series and whatnot. So, like, if you climb to the top of Challenger Series and you go to challenge battles and you beat a Vainglory 8 team out and you're now in one of the top 8 teams, like, you're going to get noticed. I mean, that's the easiest way. I don't really think it has to really be more complicated than that. If you're not beating other teams and you're not winning, then you're less likely to get noticed. There's not like leaderboards and things, so individual players. I mean, you can get noticed if you get lucky and you happen to get tagged by somebody like in the competitive community, and they're like, "Oh, hey, you're pretty good. Maybe you want to come play with us." Like there are cases like that do happen. But if you're a team, like an entire team trying to get noticed, you just have to win. That's it.
Okay. That's I love that kind of straight answer. It's like, just win,
You just gotta win. Yep.
Just gotta win. Of course. Look, one thing I can't believe this has gone on for as long as it has. And I'm sorry if I kind of went a bit over your time from that point of view. I just want to say again, thank you so much for coming on and giving me your time and giving me the chance to ask you these questions that I did spend quite a bit of time coming up with, and subjects that I think are different to what maybe have been asked before, or I hope some of these questions were outside of what you're normally asked, or gave you even maybe a bit of food for thought for yourself. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I always enjoy talking about the various aspects of esports and specifically the Vainglory community, so I appreciate it.
No problem. On that note, I will say goodbye to you, and I hope maybe in the future, touch wood, in some crazy situation, I'd love to obviously meet you in person, but by all means, in sometime in the future, if you're up to speaking again, it would be cool to have another chat with you.
Yeah, man. Just feel free to reach out and let me know.
Thanks very much, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you again, and hopefully we'll speak sometime soon.